All right, welcome. Today, we are diving deep, I mean really deep, into the engine room of the Kaspa network. We're going to see exactly how it pulls off one of the trickiest balancing acts in crypto, validating transactions with both incredible speed and rock-solid security.
For the longest time, the blockchain world has been kind of stuck with this fundamental problem. You can have a network that's blazing fast, right? Processing thousands of transactions every second. Or you can have one that's ultra secure, but it's usually slow, clunky. It's always been a trade-off. You had to pick one.
But what if you could actually have your cake and eat it too? What if you could build a system from the ground up that was designed to do both without compromise? Well, that is the exact promise behind Kaspa's validation process, and that's what we're going to unpack right now.
So to really appreciate the genius of the solution, we have to understand the problem it's solving. In a high-speed system like this, the stakes are just enormous. If you don't have a truly tough validation system, the whole network is just waiting for a catastrophic failure.
I want you to think of these as the three horsemen of the crypto apocalypse, especially for a high-speed network. Seriously, any one of these could bring the whole thing crashing down. That's why stopping them is priority number one.
So first up, we have resource exhaustion. Just imagine a spammer absolutely flooding the network with junk transactions. If the system has to waste its precious time and processing power on all that garbage, it gets clogged up. Real transactions slow to a crawl, and the nodes can literally crash. It's a classic denial of service attack, and it just grinds everything to a halt.
Next on the list, timing violations. See, in a huge distributed network, everybody has to agree on the order of events. It's critical. If a transaction gets processed too early or at the wrong moment, it creates this ripple effect of disagreements across all the nodes. That's called a consensus breakdown, and believe me, it is absolute chaos.
And finally, we have the most infamous threat of them all, the double spend attack. This is the cardinal sin of cryptocurrency. If somebody can spend the exact same digital coin in two different places at once, well, the entire economic foundation of the network just crumbles. Trust, it evaporates in an instant.
So how in the world do you defend against all three of these threats without bogging everything down? Kaspa's answer is this really elegant three-phase validation system. The best way to think about it is like a multi-layered digital security checkpoint that every single transaction has to pass through.
So every transaction, it goes on this little journey through these three separate phases. Each step gets a little tougher, providing a deeper level of scrutiny. It's all about filtering out the bad stuff and making sure only legit transactions make it all the way to the end.
Okay, so the first checkpoint is called isolation validation. This is like a security guard at the main entrance who just gives your ticket a quick glance. They're not checking your ID or anything yet. They're just making sure the ticket isn't obviously a fake or, torn in half. It's incredibly fast because it doesn't need any outside information. It only looks at the transaction itself. And you can see here just how simple but powerful these checks are. Is the format right? Are there weird negative numbers? Are you trying to use the same input twice in the same transaction? These basic checks can all be run in parallel, and they instantly weed out a ton of spam before it ever gets a chance to waste network resources. So once a transaction makes it past that first gate, it moves on to phase 2, header context validation. Okay, now the guard is looking at your ticket and comparing it to today's date and time. They're asking, hey, are you in the right place at the right time? This phase checks the transaction against the specific block it wants to get into. This is exactly how the network keeps everything in order. Transactions can be locked until a certain time has passed or a certain block has been reached. These lock time and sequence rules are what prevent transactions from being processed too early, which avoids those chaotic timing violations we talked about.
And finally, we get to the last and most critical checkpoint, state validation. This is like the agent at the boarding gate who scans your pass and checks it against the live passenger database. This is the ultimate moment of truth, where the network confirms your transaction against the entire history of the ledger. This is the phase that asks the biggest questions. Do the coins you're trying to send actually exist, and are they unspent? Is your digital signature valid, proving you're the real owner? Are you paying the correct fee? This final, really deep check is what stops double spends dead in their tracks and secures the economic heart of the entire network. Okay, so that's the theory, that's the blueprint. But how does this three-phase system actually work inside the Kaspa network? Let's take a look at how it's applied in practice. You can see this validation process is the engine for three key areas. First, the mempool, which is kind of like a digital waiting room for transactions. It uses these checks to filter out spam right away.
Then the block processing component, that's the main assembly line. It runs every single transaction through that full three-phase pipeline. And finally, the miners use validation to build new blocks, making sure every transaction they include is totally valid and profitable. It's integrated from top to bottom.
So we've seen the threats, and we've walked through Kaspa's pretty intricate three-phase solution. But what's the big deal? Why does designing a validation system this way actually matter? Let's talk about the payoff.
First and most importantly, security. This isn't just a single wall, it's a defense-in-depth strategy. Each phase is designed to protect against different kinds of attacks. So even if malicious transactions somehow slipped past one layer, the others are right there waiting to catch it. This gives you incredibly robust protection.
Second, performance. By putting all the fastest, simplest checks up front in phase one, the network avoids wasting precious time on obviously bad transactions. That efficiency, combined with parallel processing, is what lets Kaspa handle a massive number of transactions without ever sacrificing that multi-layered security. It actually solves the classic dilemma.
And finally, integrity. This whole system is designed to mathematically enforce the economic rules of the network. It's a guarantee that fees are right, that new coins follow the rules, and, most importantly, that nobody can spend money they don't actually have. This creates a stable and trustworthy economic playground for everyone.
So let's wrap it up. Kaspa's power really comes from this intelligent three-phase design. It uses parallel processing to get that incredible speed, and it uses a sophisticated concept called mass, which measures a transaction's total resource cost, not just its file size, to cleverly prevent spam. And at the end of the day, this entire system is what enforces the economic rules that make the whole network tick. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. For so long, the biggest challenge in blockchain was solving for speed or security. But when you build a system that can elegantly solve for both, you're not just improving on an old idea. You are literally opening the door to a whole new world of possibilities. For global payments, for gaming, for complex apps that just couldn't exist before. The question stops being, how do we fix this? And it becomes, what can we build next?